When we look at the cities today, it's very clear that the cities have been designed thinking that everybody's 30-year-old and athletic, and are cities that are not friendly towards the children and the older adult. That's why we think that if everything that we did in our cities, in the public spaces, the parks, the sidewalks, the bikeways, the transit, if the goal is that it would be fantastic for the 8-year-olds and the 80-year-olds, we would end up with good cities for everybody. People often ask politicians and leaders what can they do to make more of a city for people. I think there are a few things, but one simple one is that it's not going to cost them a lot of money. Call up the city council and make a decision that every single street, in every single neighborhood street, the speed limit should be 30 km or below. Automatically, we're going to be able to have safer walks and bicycle rides, and we're going to be able to, the level of the noise is going to come down, and people are going to be able to walk or bike to get eggs or milk or things. So I think in the neighborhood street, we have to lower the speed. That is something that we can. And in addition of just putting up signs, actually put up physical barriers so that people will not be able to drive any faster than that. A city that is walkable is not only having short distance, but also having the walk that is enjoyable. One of the things that makes Melbourne a great city to walk is that when you are walking, there are shops, there are windows, there are stores, there is life on the streets. You see the stands on selling flowers on the street. They are open till late at night. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday they're open 24 hours a day. So that life on the street, that vibrancy, makes it nice. But the speed is absolutely critical for people to feel safe, to feel at ease. If a person gets hit by a car at 30 kilometers an hour, there is only 5% probability that he's going to be killed. If it's at 55, it's more than 80% probability to be killed. So the reality is that people will feel much more at ease. We walk at around 5 kilometers an hour and we bike at around 15. So when the cars are going by at 25 or 30, we feel comfortable. When the cars are going at 50 or 60, we do not. This implies change. And sometimes one of the problems is when you don't have term limits, we wonder why is it that the politicians make one decision or another. Unfortunately, many times the politicians think that the number one, number two, and number three priority is how to get reelected. And in order to get reelected, probably the easiest thing is just to do a little bit of the same, not to rock the boat. Maybe do it a little bit more efficiently, but not change the paradigm. So they want to see how to hit the bullseye in the target. The problem is that we might be aiming at the wrong target. So maybe the shift is not only how to hit the bullseye, but how to hit the bullseye of the correct target. So not only do we have to do things right, but we also have to do the right things. When people wonder what Australia is doing right, I think a clear example is the city of Melbourne. The city of Melbourne 20 years ago would not have been in the top 100 cities, maybe not in the top 500 cities in the world. And recently was named the most livable city in the world. And it did a lot of things right. It created wonderful small spaces for people. It created nice walkable and bikeable and public transit, a lot of nice shops, all of these, the alleyways that have been turned into commercial areas, how to develop that life. You see the numbers. 20 years ago, there were 3 coffee shops with chairs outside. Now there are 617. It has increased the people that are living downtown, the amount of people that are working downtown. So I think it's an example of the kind of things that can be done. So if you were able to do such a fantastic transformation, people in Australia are going to say, okay, maybe we can do many other transformations like that.
An expert. Well, I think that means I have opinions. I was enchanted by Melbourne the moment I got here. I remember very well being at the corner of Flinders and Swanston and thinking, oh, this is not what I expected. It was a much more urban, older, and diverse community than I thought. And then, because we were staying out in Brunswick near Sydney Road, it became very apparent, although I was certainly aware of how important the trams are to Melbourne, how significantly the city had developed around them, and how much of that fabric still existed, how well it worked. And even in 2002, what an interesting job Melbourne was doing on building on that. And in subsequent years, it's even flowered more. the lanes in particular, the little streets, South Bank, even though I don't think entirely successfully Docklands. But above all, that fabric has become even richer. It's all about mix and proximity within about a 5 to 10 kilometer distance. If you have that right combination, then you've got transportation choice, of which bikes can be a very prominent one. There are other questions around the nature of the infrastructure, safety, even parking, but how the culture develops, nonetheless, you've got the fabric. You've got the conditions which really have the bike to become a very realistic transportation choice. One of about 5, but for many people it can actually be their dominant mode, very realistically. This is not something that people feel is a burden or the absence of other choices. It's one they're able to say, this meets my lifestyle, meets my needs, meets my pocketbook. Good combo. Where does political will come from? Well, the leaders you elect, the community that supports them. I remember reading that leadership is often about followership. You may well ask a politician to lead, but you cannot ask them to commit political suicide. They cannot take people in a direction they are not prepared to go. On the other hand, you can easily run out in front of a crowd that's prepared to be led, and maybe even take them in a direction they didn't know they wanted to go. And when it comes to cycling, very often it's a case that people don't realize what a good choice it is until it becomes apparent. Well, you have to have a group of people who can lead the way. You have to have the infrastructure, the budget, you have to be prepared to spend it. There's a whole legal apparatus that can sometimes go with that. However, fundamentally, it's making it possible as a practical choice, as part of a larger vision about how you're going to build your city. Well, what would be the main lessons? How small changes lead to big changes. A good example would be the bikeway network. Not my idea, but I thought it was brilliant when I heard about it. Rather than spending a lot of money and angst, political capital, trying to reallocate space on arterial roads, because we have a gridded city, it was quite possible to take the side street, the residential street, make that a bikeway at almost no cost. The dilemma was always, what happens when you meet an arterial? How do you get across? If the signal's 1 block away, frankly, cyclists aren't going to go down there. They're going to risk their lives trying to cross it. What you need to do is spend the money to put in the signal as part of a larger network, and lo and behold, people figure it out and start to use it. So long as it's connected, so long as it's part of a larger network that has practical destinations along the way, and then you just kind of unleash those forces. And as more people begin to use it, it becomes a social norm, literally being able to see other people like you using it makes it an option for people who might not otherwise consider it.
So finally,
which reminds me, it always helps when the cyclists themselves cycle. There's nothing quite like your mayor, in a credible way, using the bicycle as a practical form of transportation to show it can be done. When the decision makers start to use it, when they make decisions that actually benefit their own convenience as well as the community, that's a real test of sincerity. Well, what inspired me? Well, I can tell you very specifically on this trip. I was sitting in the edge at Fed Square, and there was a panel speaking. It was what was behind them. There was the Yarra and the skulls, and then the pathway and the boathouses, and there was a steady stream of cyclists. And it was almost a spiritual moment. It was the combination when the vision and the ideals of the people were reflected literally in their situation they were sitting, in a beautiful setting, a real commitment to the public realm, both the Federation Square and its public spaces and facilities, the river, its natural advantages, the way that it had been complemented with bike routes, the people using it. I had a profound sense of cultural satisfaction. You know, you're just in a place truly committed, happy with itself, moving in the right direction. Well, nice moment, wonderful moment.